pen name is R.W. Meek, and I'm the author of these two books, both recently published. First book is The Dream Collector, Book 1, Sabrine and Sigmund Freud. Book 2, The Dream Collector, Sabrine and Vincent van Gogh. Now my topic today is Sigmund Freud and Vincent van Gogh, The Untold Truth. But before I move into that topic, I just wanted to give you an overview of these novels. The setting is late 19th century Paris, an exciting time when medicine and art were in the throes of revolution. Medicine, for the first time, was turning toward maladies of the mind, and which was leading to psychology, psychotherapy, and art was turning. At this time, the artists they finally were moving out of the studios. They got tired of painting portraits of people and historical scenes, and they moved out into the streets, into the parks, into the rivers, to paint real people. And they discovered that there was a new way to paint, that you could create with primary colors and complementary colors. Everything didn't have to be muted. So the colors became startlingly bright. And then their brushstroke was something novel at the time. It was sort of broken, that gave a kind of a shimmering look. And this art became known as Impressionism. So this was all fermenting around at this time period. Plot-wise, I'll make this simple. The books follow the journey of two young women, Sabrine and Julie Freud. Sabrine, in book 1, has been confined, excuse me, all of a sudden, I don't have a voice anymore. Sabrine has been confined at a mental institution, diagnosed with grand hysteria, and she becomes a patient of Sigmund Freud. And Julie Freud, who works at the mental asylum called Salpêtrière, forms a friendship with Sigmund Freud. And so throughout the books, we follow the journey of these two young women as they explore all the things that are happening in the world of psychiatry and in the world of art, meeting so many impressionists and post-impressionists. And time permitting, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that in the plot. But to get back to my topic, during my historical research for these two novels, I learned a lot of interesting things about Sigmund Freud. This is the photo that most of us probably see all the time. This is older Sigmund Freud, the ever-present cigar, looking stern. And Freud, as you know, he's the father of psychoanalysis. It was his ideas that had a great impact on the 20th century. He was one of the first to use the term subconscious, unconscious. He was the first to think that perhaps some of the neuroses that we were having happened to us were as a result of conflict of desires, which were all being repressed in the subconscious. So that's what we know of Freud and how he developed. But my Freud is the young Freud, the 30-year-old Freud. Freud comes to Paris in 1886. He comes on a travel grant. Why does he come? He wants to study with the greatest neurologist of Europe, Jean-Martin Charcot. And Charcot runs the Salpêtrière Hospital and Asylum in Paris. This is a 17th century engraving of the salpetriere. You can see how huge it is. It was founded in the 1700s, and then it went on to develop by the time Freud arrived into, as I said, the most renowned neurological research center in Europe. And it was also an asylum for over 6,000 demented, disabled, and abandoned women. All lived within this shadow city, within the city of Paris. And why did Freud want to come here? Because Charcot had felt that he had discovered this new neurological disease called grand hysteria. And the way he was enabled to trigger it was through the use of hypnosis. So Charcot was one of the first to take a scientific approach to hypnotism. And very often he would give demonstrations to incite a grand hysterical attack in these women, who would then go through all of these different contortions which he would label, and he was really trying to figure out the somatic origin of this thing, because he was so successful in diagnosing neurological diseases in the past. Fall up there with the apron on, Tourette. So during this time, they discovered the Tourette syndrome, and so many more. They were able to pinpoint where the lesions for Parkinson's disease. So a lot of important discoveries were made here, but he kind of shifted to the women that were at the hospital, and he was so intrigued by what he termed this new neurological disease, hysteria. What I discovered about Freud when he came, just prior to his coming to Paris, he had written a scientific paper on the cocoa plant. And of course, its derivative is cocaine. And he was very enthusiastic about the possible benefits of cocaine. So his paper attracted the attention of two of the major pharmaceutical companies in the world. One was Merck, which is still around today, and that's in Germany, and the other was Park Davis, which was in Detroit. I think recently, maybe a few years ago, they got bought out. But these two companies thought that his paper was so interesting and so promising that they hired him to experiment with cocaine. So, Freud was very happy about this, and to give you an idea of how he felt about cocaine, what was beneficial for me in doing all this research was all the letters that I had access to. Sigmund Freud at this time was engaged to a lady named Martha Bernays. And during their periods of separation, he wrote to her. He wrote her over 800 letters. So they were engaged for quite a long time. So here's a letter that Sigmund Freud wrote to Martha in 1885. Money is coming into view somewhere on the business horizon again for an American company that is bringing cocaine into the market. I'm supposed to attest to their product, or to test whether it's as good as Merck's, and to publicize the result. For that, I'll receive 50 to 70 florins. Of course, quite independently of the investigator's outcome. It really isn't work at all, but a pleasure. And for the first time, I'll get paid for my authority. Well, Freud became very gung-ho about cocaine, and he started to take it while he was in Paris just on a regular basis. And he would even send, because he was getting this free cocaine from both pharmaceutical companies, he was sending it to his fiancée. And he told her, "This will make you strong and give your cheeks some color." So, and then I started to think, well, was this far out? Was this outrageous behavior, taking cocaine? And so I did a little more research and discovered that cocaine was quite prevalent in the 19th century. Here's an advertisement for Mariani wine, which was very popular. And basically it was a fusion of the cocoa leaf with wine. This company was around from the 1870s on through the 20th century. So it wasn't that unusual. And then in 1886, someone concocted Coca-Cola, which was basically, in the beginning, Coca-Cola was the cola nuts infused with cocoa leaves. And that, in 1886, the first time that Coca-Cola came out was in Atlanta, Georgia. So people were really interested in cocaine, including Pope Leo XIII. If this didn't legitimize cocaine, I don't know what would. The Pope just loved Mariani wine. And he loved it so much that he awarded the Vatican medal to Mr. Mariani. So, cocaine was out there, and Freud, he pretty much took it on a regular basis for about 12 years. And to give Freud credit, it wasn't just for the uplift and the pleasure of cocaine. He really sincerely thought that cocaine had a lot of medicinal benefits. He thought that it could cure depression and also cure other addictions. The morphine addictions were quite prevalent at that time, and even his best friend was a morphine addict, and he prescribed cocaine to relieve him of his morphine addict. But as we all know, that cocaine can be pretty insidious, and so over the years, Freud really lost his interest in cocaine, and his addiction just remained cigars. Unfortunately, that had a tragic outcome. So that's, in a nutshell, is the kind of thing I found about Freud. Now I'd like to turn to Vincent van Gogh. Who's more predominant in book 2. Vincent, what I discovered is that Vincent van Gogh and his younger brother, Theo van Gogh, on the right, were extremely close. And Vincent van Gogh came to Paris in 1886 to stay with his younger brother, who was a picture dealer. And he came to Paris because his younger brother, Theo, said, "You've got to see this new art. You've got to see Impressionism." And here is an early self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh, still influenced by the darker shades, the kind of Rembrandt, chiaroscuro kind of things. But his brother really introduced him to Impressionism. What interested me when I was researching this book about Vincent van Gogh is I really wanted to know why he was so troubled and why he committed suicide and why he cut his ear off. So that was part of my research. So what I had to help me was, except for the short time that Vincent van Gogh lived with his brother in Paris for 2 years, he lived there, the rest of the time they communicated via letters. And Vincent van Gogh wrote over 900 letters to his brother. And Teo kept every one of them. See how much he adored his brother. And unfortunately, we don't have any of the letters that Teo wrote Vincent. So I thought, if I was going to find any clues on why he did what he did, why he cut his ear off, and then why did he aim a revolver at his heart? So I studied the letters, and I think I found a clue. These letters began when Vincent was in his 20s, so we have a whole span of time. And even from the very beginning, Vincent van Gogh was very attracted to this poet called Alfred de Musset. And he was especially taken with the poem that Musset called Les Nuits, Nights. And in this poem, the main character in this poem is a poet. And throughout this poet's life, every time he has something significant happen to him, an illness, something major, or a broken heart, aborted love affair. Every time something like that happened throughout these poems, they would start in January and they moved each month. The poems would go to December. There would be a person, a mysterious figure that would appear to the poet every time something major happened. So I started studying the verse and Vincent's always quoting these verses to his brother. This is from December night. Whene'er in sleep I close my eye, whene'er I wish but to die, whichever way my steps did turn, there always came across my track a mournful being clothed in black, as like me as my brother born. So I kept looking through all of these verses throughout the de Musset poem, and here is another quote. The poet's asking, who the heck are you? You keep appearing. And the figure says, I'm no god, nor demon quite, and you entitle me aright when you the name of brother gave. Wherein you wander, there shall I, and when your time has come to die, I'll come and sit upon your grave. The grave. So that led me to this grave. This is a tombstone in the hometown of Vincent van Gogh, where he grew up as a child. And buried there, actually in the cemetery behind his father's church, his father was a minister, buried behind there was this grave, Vincent van Gogh, 1852. He lived one day, 1852, March 30th, 1852. One day. And Vincent van Gogh, our Vincent van Gogh, was born March 30th, 1853. Same exact date. So this, putting my Freudian hat on, I started to imagine how it must have been maybe growing up and being able to walk out to the cemetery anytime you wanted to and seeing the tombstone of your dead brother. And growing up, maybe being mischievous and maybe not always behaving, and maybe your mother still thinks of Vincent one, and maybe he feels like he's not as good as Vincent one. So, to get back to the relationship he had with his brother, when Vincent van Gogh decided to become an artist around the age of 30, really late, his brother said, I'll give you an allowance. I'll take care of you. So through the whole arc of Vincent's painting life, he had an allowance from his brother, 150 francs in those days, which was a decent amount of money. You could live off of it. His brother made about 500 francs. So a fourth of Theo's salary was always given to his brother. He really believed that his brother had such talent. So towards the later years in Vincent van Gogh's life, some things happened. Theo decided he found the right woman for him, and he announced his engagement to Vincent. Vincent at the time was living in Arles, and just around that time, after Vincent learned that his brother was engaged, he severed his ear. This was in December of 1888. And at that time, Theo was scheduled to take a train to go to the Netherlands to be with his fiancée. And because Vincent severed his ear, Theo had to postpone that trip and took the train down to Arles and spent Christmas Eve and Christmas with his brother who had just severed his ear. So that kind of gave me a cue of what might be triggering this irrational behavior. And then this happened. Theo and his new wife Joanna married, and they had a child. And they told Vincent, we want to name him Vincent. And please don't do that. Name him after our father, Theodorus. No, we're going to name him Vincent, and you're going to be the godfather. So Vincent paid 1 week of, he visited his new sister-in-law for a week in Paris, and he became very troubled after that visit, and he went back to where he was living at the time in Auvers and wrote a letter saying, you seem to be in so much trouble, I feel really bad. So what I feel, and again my Freudian hat, is that here it was, a brother that they were so close to all of those years, and now he has a new responsibility. He has Vincent III, I call Vincent III, to take care of. So I can imagine, all throughout his life, Vincent always had the feeling that he was a stranger on this earth, that he just didn't quite fit in. And my hypothesis is that he was always haunted by Vincent I. And then when Vincent III came, it was more than he could bear. And so in Auvers, one afternoon, he went out into the wheat fields, had a revolver, aimed it at his heart, didn't quite hit the heart, and then he came back to his lodgings, and in a couple of days he died of blood hemorrhage. So, and the double tragedy becomes less than a year later, Theo, for want of a better word, goes insane. And his wife has to take him to a mental institution in the Netherlands. And he never recovered, and he died there. Which I think was from, he just sank into the quicksand of remorse. He knew that, when the new Vincent came, he knew that's probably what prompted his brother to kill himself. so he never could get over the remorse. And so his life soon ended. But time moved on, and Joanna understood all of this, and she was sensitive enough. She started to see all the letters that Theo had kept, and single-handedly, and keep in mind now, Vincent van Gogh is not famous yet. Nobody still thinks his work is just too far out. She collected all of these letters and made a book of it. And as time went on, she decided she wanted to marry someone else. So she had Theo's grave dug up in the Netherlands and had it shipped back to Alver. So now they were resting side by side. And in the dedication to the first collection of letters that were printed, Joanna wrote, "And in their death they were not divided." Now, I know this is a little lugubrious, but what we have to remember is that Vincent van Gogh left us over 2,000 works of art, including 600 paintings. And some are here in California that you can visit, including probably one of the more famous ones, if I can get my cursor to move here. You can see this at the Getty. This is the masterpiece, The Irises. And if you choose to purchase Book 2, I give a very good description of the irises. But in the remaining time, what I'd like to talk about is another painting that's at the Norton Simon Museum in Pasadena, a painting that I'm very attracted to. And this painting is called the Mulberry Tree. And the story behind the Mulberry Tree is the first owner of the Mulberry Tree was the Impressionist Camille Pissarro. Now, Camille Pissarro was the oldest Impressionist, and really some consider him the father of Impressionism. He's kind of got the ball rolling, you know. Let's break up these brushworks, get some shimmering, have people look away from the painting, get an impression. He was the first to think about that. And Vincent loved to exchange paintings with artists that he really admired. So Theo, knowing that Vincent is dead by now, Theo, knowing that his brother would love to have given Camille Pissarro a painting, gave him the Mulberry Tree. Now in my novel, I try to create that experience for Camille Pissarro. And what we know about Camille Pissarro is he lived in a village outside of Paris called Erigny. And what he would do periodically, he would take the train up to Paris to sell his paintings or his painted fans, and then come back home to his wife and 5 children. So that's the setup for this excerpt that I'm going to read. He's on the train, and a sudden snowfall creates a problem for the train, and the train has to stop. So he's here in a compartment all by himself. Time on his hands. Perhaps he should now summon the courage to ponder the Van Gogh painting. Theo, before the poor fellow descended into madness, beseeched him to make the exchange. Vincent often talked of trading a painting with the great Pissarro, said Theo. Pissarro did not hesitate. To have any painting by your brother would be an honor and a privilege. Theo rushed into the bedroom where his wife Joanna was nursing baby Vincent. He returned with a masterpiece, a study done in autumn at the St. Rami Sanatorium. He considered this one of his best, said Theo. And so Pissarro's last conversation with the rational Theo Van Gogh. He set the canvas on the opposite banquette. And there we go. Vincent's mulberry tree. He gazed and gazed. He knew that his wife would not see beyond its strangeness, feeling it the work of an overwrought temperament, and he would be unable, impossibly unable, to convince her of the fact that this here was the most advantageous exchange he had ever made. Certainly a tree unlike any Pissarro had ever seen. In full autumn foliage, the mulberry tree branched, twisted, stretched, and contorted to reach skyward as though a myriad of hands in prayer. The mulberry was resplendent with color, bursting, exploding into stunning golds and yellows, all set against the bluest of skies. Pissarro had nothing but the highest admiration for the brushwork, the rush of thick painted colors that seemed to come from a hand charged with electrical energy. He was overwhelmed. Vincent van Gogh had burned into nature a new vision, infused his tumultuous spirit into the mulberry tree. Pissarro must keep such a flaming conflagration of color in his studio. His wife would be unable to appreciate the artistic sophistication it took to contain its vibrancy. She will surely sell it one day when I pass from this earth, more than likely to a crafty dealer at a pittance who will auction it off to a more advanced century for a true fortune. So that concludes my little talk on Vincent and Freud, but I'd like to conclude, because remember I told you there's a plot to these books. It's just not all this historical information. So here's how my publisher condensed the plot of book one. A bit dramatic, but kind of gets to the essence of what the plot is. And here's book two. So concludes. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
You want to take any questions? Yeah.
I'll ask a question. What's your favorite Van Gogh painting?
Well, someone once said, every time you go to a painting that you've seen once before, and maybe years later you go to it again, you see something different. So all of these paintings kind of shift back and forth to me. But my favorite painting that I'm sentimental over is at the National Gallery of Art. And it's a small painting about AB, and it just shows an old man. You only see his back, and he's walking across this, he's dressed in blue, and he's walking across this golden, thick wheat field. And I just imagine it being Vincent van Gogh, and just the colors are just so enriching. I love that painting. I've got a few minutes. I've got a story I can tell you about that painting. I used to be a docent at the National Gallery of Art, and one time I got the assignment that I had to take a Japanese captain and his wife to see the Japanese ceramics that were down in the basement of the National Gallery. So I didn't know anything about Japanese ceramics, but you know, when you're a docent, you study ahead of time, and then I did it, and I took the captain and his wife on a tour of these, and he had a whole entourage. It seemed like bodyguards and everything. So I said, but there's one painting I'd like to share with you. So we went on, you know, and they're all looking at me puzzled, and I took them to the painting I talked about, the Van Gogh painting. And in the Van Gogh painting, as he's walking away, he has this arc of wall, and at the end of the wall, he has these beautiful blue flowers sprouting out. So I give a little talk to the painting, and by the way, the woman is dressed in a kimono. I mean, she was a real thing. And so I'm saying, you know, and if it wasn't for Japan, Vincent van Gogh wouldn't paint like this, because really he was very influenced by Japanese art. And these flowers are like a gift for you. She didn't speak a word of English, but she had a translator. So she's looking at the painting, and she goes like this. She takes a couple steps back like this. She bows like that. And I'll never forget that. You know, this is a moving time. So anyway, any other questions?
I just wondered, I can tell you're an art lover. How did you come to write a book about Freud? Is that related to the art?
Well, it's when I was trying to do a master's thesis at American University in Washington, D.C., and I was trying to decide what to choose. And then I discovered that Sigmund Freud and Vincent van Gogh were in Paris the same year, 1886. So I said, wow, man, what if they met? So I did a lot of research and discovered, no, they didn't meet. So I had to do other research why Freud was there. So one thing led to another. And my research, really, a little embarrassed to tell you, but I researched, I didn't do it I told my teacher, no, I'm not gonna do this for a thesis, I'm gonna choose something else. She was very disappointed. But I started doing my own research. And so then it led to all the things about Sigmund Freud that I discovered that were so fascinating. So I wanted to create a narrative with all of these interesting facts. So that's how Freud got into it.
It seems like Freud has this connection to dreams in your book. How do you make that connection between dreams and, you know, someone who was painting from life and wasn't painting from dreams?
I can't hear. Could you speak a little louder?
So you make a connection between Freud and Vincent van Gogh, and Freud has a lot of focus on dreams. How did you make the connection between dreams and someone who's painting from life and not from dreams?
The book is called The Dream Collector, and what I found out about Freud was one of the most important things he was working on was the interpretation of dreams, where a lot of his important theories came out. So I thought that would be an interesting idea to incorporate the dreams message into the book. So I have a fictitious character, Julie Ferret, who becomes obsessed with collecting dreams because her theory is that the one unforgettable dream, if she can find the one unforgettable dream that these people that she admires had, she could figure out their future. She could figure out who they really were. So it was a way for her to meet all of the Impressionists. So in the first book, she becomes very enamored with the art of Cézanne. So I studied Cézanne, and I learned things like he had a phobia about being touched. So I'm going, well, there's a phobia, Freud. Now, what we need is a dream that will kind of reveal what his phobia, why he has the phobia. So throughout the book, I have Julie collecting these dreams from all the various artists, and it gives a clue to who they are. So that's the dream thing.
Where does the name Floret come from? How did you come
I
up with that name?
invented it. Yeah. But trying to be clever. Ferret was not her real name. She had to have a disguise in order to work at the Salpêtrière. So you have to read book one to know why she had the disguise. But when she finally reveals that her name isn't Ferret, Freud starts to think and he goes, oh, Ferret. If you take one of the T's out, it means forest. Oh, you're hiding in the forest. So I'm always trying to connect everything so it all becomes a tapestry, the books.
Did Van Gogh, was he ever married, or did he actually ever have a lover? Or did that something
No,
that-
he was very unhappy in love. He had several affairs, but they didn't turn out very well.
Did you draw from that for your story?
I actually focused on one of the women in Vincent van Gogh's life. If you look up his work, he painted a woman called La Segretore, and she ran a cafe in Montmartre called the Tambourine. The tambourine was kind of cute. It was a tambourine motif, and all the tables were made out of tambourines, and she was a former model. Anyway, she ran this cafe, and the facts I learned is they got to know each other quite well, and there's hints that they had an affair and she had an abortion. It's just very subtle, and then I kind of allude to that a little bit, but that was pretty much his last attempt at finding someone. Well, in my book, he finds Sabrine. That's why and what I wanted to do there was to highlight his emotional problems. So I thought the way I could do that was Sabrine would have emotional problems as well, and they could be mirrors to each other. It would be a way for the reader to understand Vincent, and then through understanding Sabrine, and then the goal is to help both of them solve their neuroses, what's repressing them, and hopefully a cure. So Sabrine gets cured. There's a happy ending there, but we know what happens to Vincent. So anyway, I think the time has run out. I just want to let you know that I have books there. I have the hardcover. I have the soft cover. They're at a discount. The hardcover's $30. The soft cover's $22. And you can, if you don't like to read books, you can always do it on Kindle at Amazon. Or you can go to Barnes & Noble across the street and they have a couple of copies of my book. So I'll be around. If anyone's interested, I'll sign. Take your money.
Yeah, I really enjoyed his books, which is why I invited him here